I was on autopilot the whole time I was driving. The weird thing was, the whole time I was driving, there were no distractions. I didn't see any monsters. No hand took over the steering wheel. Nothing. I only realized that I was lost when I passed by the same tree for the 15th time. I decided to walk instead of drive, so I parked the car and threw open the door. I listened to the leaves and sticks crunching under my feet as I marched through the dark woods. There wasn't a single star in the night sky, but despite that it felt suspiciously peaceful. I felt the cold September air against my skin. I was just waiting, expecting something to suddenly jump out at me, but odd enough, it never happened. I kept walking for who knows how long, until I saw flashing red and blue lights in the distance. I sprinted over to the source of the light, and found the cult I found earlier. This time police were scattered everywhere, examining dead bodies. There were also a few other people there. They were holding huge cameras, and a few people had microphones and were talking. One officer was comforting the child I freed a few hours ago. The kid was sobbing. I watched helplessly as the kid jumped at the slightest of sounds. The kid must have been traumatized by the whole experience. I snuck into an officer's vehicle and waited for an officer to start driving. I waited there for 2 hours before an officer walked to the car and drove off. The whole ride was dead silent. The officer drove out of the forest, which took a few hours, and made it back to town. I looked out the window and watched the sun rise. It must have been morning. Eventually, the officer pulled into a parking lot. When the officer opened the car door, I zipped out of there. I recognized the place as the police station. I started walking to where I knew the twins were. I thought about everything. Eventually, I thought of something that I didn't have the answer to. If I didn't kill them, then what was that weird red stuff on me? I figured that I would find out from when I discovered that cult, but I didn't. Maybe I would find out from the officers. I eventually found the twins. They were watching the local news, but I froze when I saw what was on the news. It was about the cult in the forest. The reporters talked about the footprints that led to the bodies. When they showed the footprints, I recognized them as mine. They theorized that the footprints were from the murderer that killed everyone, and the murderer was a monster themselves. I got a bad, sinking feeling in my chest when I realized that they were going to hunt me down. They showed pictures of the cultists and suspects, and I saw the picture of the lady in the pictures back at the uncle's house on the screen. I remember that both the uncle and the lady had wedding rings, so my theory that they were married was correct. Was it possible that he killed his own wife because he found out that she was a member of the cult? I tried to keep calm, but I couldn't. I just killed all those people and monsters, and I got one of the twins' relatives arrested. I sat down and hid, watching the twins. I sat there watching the twins for hours. They were slowly starting to get better. I could tell because they weren't so jumpy anymore. Eventually the woman walked in with a woman and a man. Since they both had wedding rings on, I could tell that they were married. The woman told the twins that the man and the woman were going to look after them. The twins and I followed the man and woman to the car. I managed to squeeze in there. The whole car ride was silent, except the car radio that played music. The twins stared out the window. The man was driving, and the woman was on her phone. Eventually the man parked in a garage. The home was in a nice, small neighborhood. The house had a modern look to it, and the yard was taken care of. The house looked beautiful. The couple and the twins exited the car, and I followed them into the house. The woman told them that they can take their luggage to the guest room, and the man went to buy groceries. The twins went upstairs and began unpacking. They put their clothes in the wardrobe and put their things on a desk. I watched them from inside the closet. The rest of the night was peaceful. The couple were really warm and welcoming to the twins. They ate dinner, watched some TV, and went to bed. The twins quickly fell asleep in the guest room. I got into a comfortable position and went to sleep. I was woken up by the shuffling in the closet. I looked around and noticed something moving around in the closet with me. Maybe it was a mouse. I looked closer and realized that it wasn't a mouse. It was my own shadow. It slid under the door, so I sneakily followed it out of the closet. It led me to the bedroom, where the couple was sleeping. It slowly morphed into a large monster. It a tiny bit see-through and was about 6 feet tall. It had pitch black eyes. I quickly identified the type of monster. It was an impersonator monster. An impersonator monster can morph into anything. It can morph into objects, people, animals, even shadows. They just don't have the abilities the person/thing they are impersonating has. So that explains why my own shadow never went away, even when there's no light. I slowly morphed into my real form. I towered over the impersonator monster, but even then, the monster didn't seem intimidated at all. I quickly grabbed the impersonator and quietly sprinted out with it. I threw open the door and stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" I asked. The impersonator stared straight into my eyes. I tried to put on a brave face, but I was actually terrified. "I'm just the one who's been following you around. Haven't you been following your kids around for years?" the impersonator asked. I remembered the red stuff that was always on me every time someone went missing and put two and two together. "You're the one killing them, aren't you?" I asked. "You're part of the cult, aren't you?" The impersonator did a slow clap that lasted for a couple seconds with a cheeky smile on his face. "Murder is always messy. That's why there's always blood on you every time someone goes missing around you. And with the iron taste in your mouth, you sleep with your mouth open," the imposter clarified. "But why do you always go after people that hurt the twins?" I asked. "Because then you would be a suspect," the impersonator answered. Of course, I thought that an actual detective would be solving the case, not you and a bunch of strangers on the internet. And yes, I know about those posts. Those posts are pretty much slander, you know. The impersonator rolled his eyes. "But what are you going to do?" I asked. "Kill the couple," the impersonator responded. "But why?" I asked. "Because they are going to hate you after this. I'll make sure of it," the impersonator responded. "I bet they already hate you." No they don't. I didn't want them to hate me." "Yes they do." The impersonator started to turn around, to go back inside, but I grabbed them before they went in. "Shut up. Shut up," I yelled. I threw him on the ground and kept on punching, kicking and stomping on him. It wasn't long before they were severely damaged. After a minute or two, I finally stopped and stared in horror at what I've done. I heard footsteps come from behind and a door open. Then I heard a high-pitched scream. I turned around to see Addison and Andrew staring at me. I was covered in the monster's blood. I turned around only to see that the impersonator turned into a human. "Addison, Andrew, go away, you monster," Andrew yelled. His face was red with anger. "You murderer," Addison screamed while sobbing. I heard the couple come downstairs, but I'm pretty sure they hadn't seen me. I was gone by then. I ran away from the house sobbing. The twins hate me. I didn't even care that I wasn't even in my shadow form. It didn't matter anyway. While I was running, the twins' words kept repeating in my head. Monster. Murderer. They hate me now. They hate me. I ran for hours. Even though I was exhausted, I kept on running. I eventually found myself at the forest. I sprinted in there, not caring that I was getting smacked by the branches. I eventually slowed down, and I found myself at a river. I laid down, exhausted. I listened to the river, while a million thoughts went through my head. I got the twins' relative arrested. I was getting followed by an impersonator monster all my life. And now, the twins hate me. I sat up and watched the moon and the river. The river glimmered under the moon. The moon seemed to shine extra bright that night. While the sound of the river flowing was loud, it was also calming. I calmly listened to the river. I always loved water. I calmly walked to the edge of the cliff and looked down to the river. If I don't answer anyone's comments, just assume that I'm dead. And that is all for today's video, my little bunyips. Liking, disliking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell is completely up to you. I hope you all sleep well tonight. Have sweet dreams. Good night.